Hello, and welcome to the Module 14 commentary video, RIM Program Auditing for LIS 886. As I prepare to turn you into an IRS agent, please take a moment to adjust your video and sound settings. If you encounter any difficulty viewing this video, please contact me as soon as possible. Prior to viewing this commentary video, please read pages 191 to 231 in the Kahn-Blair text. Also, please read the handout on Canvas called Audit to Ensure RIM Program Health by Helen Streck. Directions on where to locate the handout will be available in your Module 14 to-do list, which is also posted on Canvas. There are few things professional employees dread more than the word audit. Yes, an audit is an exam of sorts, which will quickly reveal all things your program unit is doing wrong in the RIM space. However, if done correctly, an audit is a protective mechanism. Think of the many organizations you've read about over the last 14 weeks. Had these places actually took a moment to review security protocols, record storage, different things like that, do you think they would have been presented with some of the disastrous RIM meltdowns which occurred? I would assume probably not. So let's take a brief moment to discuss the need for RIM program audits. Then let's explore what you can do as an auditor to make the process as painless as possible. By definition, an audit is a planned and documented activity performed by qualified personnel to determine by investigation, examination, or evaluation of objective evidence the adequacy and compliance with established procedures or applicable documents and the effectiveness of their implementation. In other words, are you actually doing what your rules say you should be doing? Seems simple, right? Everyone has a set of rules and they are to be followed. Not so easy, however, in execution. So, audits are an essential part of any RIM program for many reasons. First, it's the only way program units to know if program units are actually doing what the organization's stated RIM policies and procedures are. For example, are program units really shredding the source document after it's imported to the electronic records management system? Another reason to audit is for the sake of continuous process improvement. For example, maybe your company implemented the same electronic records management system in 2009. After several years, is it still meeting your needs? Worse yet, has the technology evolved through upgrades to the point that there are now security holes present in procedures and are maybe compromising data, and no one's brought that to the RIM department's attention? By periodically auditing procedures, these issues can be flushed to the surface. Also, audits are a good follow-up to previous issues. For example, was a program unit cited in last year's audit for not following the retention schedule? If so, an annual audit can see how far they've come in compliance. Finally, audits show good faith. By performing audits, it shows your organization is serious about keeping employee and customer data safe, for example. Also, it shows that you have the best interest of your shareholders/stakeholders in mind in day-to-day operations. These are just but a few of the important elements to consider in why to perform an audit. Auditing can be conducted in several different ways. Typically, your RIM program will be audited by an outside or external auditor. These auditors will come in from an outside entity, typically some kind of consulting firm, and bring a fresh set of unbiased eyes to your organization. This is a helpful exercise because the auditors can ask unbiased questions of your overall program and give a unique perspective that you couldn't give because you're too close to the data and the matter. While typically feared because they're outside people, it's so helpful to have unrelated individuals audit your organization, and this is mostly to keep you honest. Another way to audit is through the internal auditing process. This process is done by individuals within your organization and is conducted on an ongoing basis. As a RIM director, you will likely be in this role or at least maybe overlooking staff which will do this for you. In an internal RIM audit, you will go out to the program units to assess compliance with the records retention schedule and a whole host of other RIM items, all of these of which you will either determine or will have dictated to you by some sort of a legal committee or maybe an executive compliance committee from your board or president or something like that. An advantage to an internal audit is familiarity with the organization and its stated procedures. In the RIM space, auditing is such an important function, but it need not be overwhelming. Remember, as an auditor, you are not responsible for ensuring that every element of a program unit is functioning according to the book, so to speak, at least as it deals with things that are outside of RIM. In most organizations, there will be a separate an auditing function for things such as financials, purchases, budgeting, and other things like that. While you may be interested in knowing the supporting documentation for these transactions are present, it is not your responsibility to know if the program unit is following the right financial procedures, for example. In a RIM audit, you or someone from outside the organization will want to examine the organization's overall RIM policies and procedures. If you are auditing internally, you'll want to examine any program unit level policies and procedures. By taking a look at these items, you can quickly see if they're current A and being followed B. Also, you'll want to be sure that you audit official documentation. These documents can include, but may not be limited to, records disposal certificates, security paperwork for records management system permission, records retention schedule edit approvals, and so on. You will also want to examine physical and electronic storage spaces. If you know the procedures state source documents are to be shredded 1 week after scanning into the electronic records management system, audits showing physical documents dating back 6 months would be an exemption to those followed procedures. Also, if you randomly look into the records management system and see 6 months worth of records waiting to be destroyed pending approval, this would be another exception to the 1 week maximum deletion policy, for example. Finally, out of sight should definitely not mean out of mind. Make sure you're also examining the overall picture of records stored off-site. If you have boxes of records in an off-site storage facility waiting to be destroyed, an audit would reveal these and would be an exemption to the policy if you have it stated that records are supposed to be destroyed at a certain point. Again, look at what you're telling them to do and make sure what they're doing actually adds up. Okay, enough of the basics of auditing. Let's walk through a fictitious internal RIM audit scenario so you might get a high-level view of how this whole process is executed. Perhaps don't use the word execute during the audit. Well, whatever. Let's move on. Before you begin the process of meeting with a program unit to determine policy compliance, be sure to set the groundwork for a successful audit. First, in the planning process for your audit year, determine the list of units which will be reviewed. This list may be random or could be driven by new regulations or pending litigation at the organization. Next, do your homework. While you're not expected to be an expert on every area, at least be knowledgeable of what a RIM program or what a HR program does, for example. Next, plan a pre-meeting with strategic leaders of the unit you will be auditing. This might be over the phone or in person, but you want to let the person in charge know that you're coming in to assess policy compliance and will be asking questions and reviewing files. Finally, you'll want to set the ground rules of your meeting. Be sure that you let strategic leaders know, for example, that you are expected to be there for an hour asking questions of staff members and poking around in file cabinets. This discussion sets the ground rules and lets you hash out the awkward parts before you actually set on foot, so no one feels like they're being ambushed. When you arrive on site, be professional, friendly, and easy to approach. Being audited is scary even if you don't have anything to hide. The more you can do to decrease the tension, the better. On the screen, you'll see a list of questions you can use to start digging for information. You'll notice none of these questions use the word why, as it puts people on the defense. Also, these questions are open-ended and don't allow for a single-word answer. By asking genuine, open-ended questions, you'll be amazed by what program unit staffs will divulge. And please do not use language like what you see on the screen. This is the fastest way to get program unit staff to clam up, lie, or be very uncomfortable as you begin to attack their work. You are not the police, and you do not have the means to fire them on the spot. So, be smart and don't ask any questions which could put somebody on the defense. Also, attempt to limit your sarcasm and dry humor during an audit. While it's fine and dandy in many other situations, these tones can often be misinterpreted in audits. J.P. Russell & Associates, an auditing firm, has a list of 20 things every good auditor should do while working with a client. I've selected 4, which you can see on your screen. While most of these are probably pretty obvious, it never hurts to be reminded of how to treat a program unit staff in such situations. Ultimately, you should never enter an audit without a list of policy and procedure objectives that you're looking to evaluate. You might want to break the elements into different content areas, such as electronic records management, paper filing plans, and so on. Ultimately, you are evaluating whether or not the program unit meets expectations and then noting the reasons why if they don't. Also, any exception to policy needs to be accompanied by recommendations. Think of it this way. An exception to policy would basically mean you are not following the stated policies and procedures that are expected of you. And also, make sure you put recommendations with any exceptions unless it's very obvious in the notes, for example, what needs to be done. Recommendations, think about it this way, are action items and should have dates assigned for follow-up so you can make sure that they're actually being done if they're not being followed. Also, be sure program unit audits results are sent to strategic leaders of the area and his or her boss. Language in the letter should include the date of the audit, the outcome of the audit, and who to contact with questions. This report, as a courtesy, should be given to the program unit leader before it's distributed to anybody else. This gives the leader the chance to clarify language and ask any questions that they may have. In other words, it's just a professional courtesy. This concludes the Module 14 commentary, RIM Program Auditing. If you have any questions or would like to discuss auditing further, please do not hesitate to contact me directly. Have a great week.